Well, we have a special guest today from Wichita, Kansas. How about that? Suzanne is the Code Enforcement Liaison, I believe is the correct title.
Yes.
They're in Wichita working with the city and connecting volunteers with individuals that have code violations and needs on their home and land. Uh, you don't need me to hear. You don't need to hear me talk about this. We want to hear from her and this exciting and really very unique project. So, Suzanne, welcome aboard. Looking forward to
Thank
learning
you.
more.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about my program. Thank you.
I think we were visiting earlier about how unique this approach really is. Perhaps the only one in the country.
I have not found another program, and I've looked to try and find other communities to network with, and I have not found anything that really kind of matches what we do.
Well, kind of lay out for us then what it is that you do.
Okay, first of all, I kind of want to go back on the creation of this program and the evolution of it over. I've been in this program for about a little over 5 years, and it has evolved quite a bit in that time period. Before I was hired, there was some additional grant funds through the Housing and Community Services Department of the City of Wichita, and they had gone to our code enforcement office and said, we would like to fund another inspector, a code enforcement inspector. My supervisor at the time said, that's not really what I want. I want someone who can kind of assist residents with accessing resources to resolve their violations. Prior to my beginning of this program, basically these cases, we would start a case on them. They would have a certain amount of time to resolve the violations. If they were not resolved in a timely manner, then these were escalated to the court system. But when you have individuals that could not afford to make repairs on their homes, or maybe were elderly or had health issues that made it difficult for them to get out and clean up their yards and that sort of thing, we were just adding an additional stressor to this. We would take them to court. They may have to lose pay for not going to work. It could cause problems. Employers don't always like it when you say, I can't come to work, I have to go to court. That can cause problems there. Transportation to get there. And then ultimately, there would be fines assessed. And in many of these cases, the violations were still not resolved because they still did not have the ability to resolve those. And so my supervisor said, I want a social worker, someone with that kind of experience who can come in and work with these families. We had several grant programs available. We knew that there were volunteers out there that would be willing, churches, organizations who would probably be willing to help with some of this, but we just needed someone to focus on helping them access those resources and finding those resources. And so I was brought on. They convinced this grant program that this was what we wanted for this particular position. After 2 years, I was removed from the grant and put on the regular budget because the city had recognized that these services were valuable. We were resolving code violations sooner with less expense to the homeowner and the resident. And it also evolved. Under the grant, I could only work in a very limited part of Wichita based on income and that sort of thing. It eventually, over time, revolved to the entire county. Most work is done within the city of Wichita, but we are located in Sedgwick County, and now I can provide some services to all of Sedgwick County. In this process, after I came on, no one had ever done this before. So my boss was kind of, this is kind of the vision for this program, go. And perfect for me. Because I had lots of ideas and I never really had the power. I'd worked in social services a long time, worked in a lot of different positions within. I worked in mental health, domestic violence, juvenile offenders, but this was a program where I could just go and kind of find resources and see what we can do for these individuals. And so I started in a limited space of Wichita and now revolved into an entire county that I assist. And last year was a little slower because of COVID-19, but the year before I assisted 691 families. And so there was definitely a need for this program. Within this program, some things, when I first started, I worked with Sedgwick County Environmental Resources, and they were able to add some money to help me into their budget to help me purchase dumpsters, to get dumpsters, to rent dumpsters for individual projects. For a lot of people, this required that to get their project completely resolved was a roll-off dumpster, but those can be expensive. And if you're working with someone with limited income, that's huge. That's huge. And so I'm able to provide dumpsters for programs or for projects, for individuals and for my volunteer groups. Um, we later added free dump vouchers for smaller projects for individuals who had a truck, trailer, some way to get to our local transfer station, and that would allow them to dump a load for free. And in some cases, this was a better way to go because they had less than a dumpster full, and they had a way to get it there. It also put a little bit more of the responsibility on them to make sure it got there. And so that also was added over time. When I first started, they had a resource guide that they gave to individuals. It had the various grant programs on there to that individuals could call for assistance with home repairs, but they didn't always understand eligibility. And they also found it difficult to make these phone calls. These were people that were in crisis, and phone calls are difficult for people when they're in crisis. Reaching out is difficult if there's some pride involved, that sort of thing. And they really didn't always know how to fill out the applications and work through those systems. And so this became an important part of my position. I assisted people with determining which programs they might be eligible for. And I also helped them with that application process. Most of the applications, they could send them directly to the programs or they could send them through me. There was an advantage to sending them through me because it was easier to advocate for them with getting them more time, whether that was with their individual inspector, if it hadn't gone to the court process yet, or if it was in the court system when I'm trying to advocate for continuance in court or a lower fine, that sort of thing. If we had something in place, we were just waiting for the grant program to be able to assist them. That was helpful if I was kind of involved in that process. I could say definitively that this particular application was submitted on this date. It went to this particular program, that sort of thing. So that became an important part too, in order for me to provide that advocacy, was to be involved in that. And it was never required. Individuals could go directly to the programs, but many chose to go that route, just so that they had that additional layer of support. And so I assisted with that. And I have over the 5 years, I've assisted with helping them identifying which grants they might be eligible for, helping them work through barriers to approval. For example, at one point, someone would qualify for all the grant programs except they were behind on their property taxes. They had had some medical issues that had happened within that family. All their money was going towards that, and they were behind on their property taxes. I worked through a program with Salvation Army that helped get those taxes caught up and made them eligible for the program. So there was a lot of that on the side too, is working with some of our local agencies to provide financial support. I also got some churches on board with providing some limited financial support for individuals who had violations, because it's required to have trash service. It's required to have your electricity and gas on. If those were turned off because of poverty issues or crisis, these churches can step in and help get those utilities back on. And so that violation could be resolved that way as well. and found that they were more likely to prioritize those utility bills once they actually got back on, and they realized that could get code violations for those, than if you were just trying to get them, to find a way to pay those in advance. And so that has been a real important part too, is finding those financial resources. I've had emergency air conditioning repairs that needed done in the middle of summer. It's 99 degrees out, and there's a $300 repair that needs done, and they do not have the money for it. I've worked with some local HVAC companies to provide lower cost repairs, and also would send out an emergency notice to my volunteers. I need some financial support, $300 for this family that doesn't have their air conditioning went out and it's 99 degrees out. And I have instant response often to those. And so there was a lot of ways to connect with my groups. And at the time I've started this, they had one group listed on this volunteer list, other than one group that did painting for 1 week in the summer. I have grown that to about 115 volunteer groups. And at first I did a lot of outreach to get people on board, and now they're coming to me. One organization will tell another one, hey, if your organization would like to volunteer, contact Suzanne, she can get you on board. And so the first 50 or so, I did a lot of outreach, but then it's doubled because of word of mouth. They're coming to me and asking to be added. So it just takes a little bit of work at the beginning, and then now the work is coming to me, the help is coming to me, which is incredible to me. Another thing that was really added that wasn't part of the original program is, first of all, I could only work with individuals with code violations. Now, anybody who contacts me, if they really kind of have a need, and my program is more need-based than income-based, although I look at that, sometimes there's a particular reason why maybe their income doesn't qualify them, but circumstances in their life, health, that sort of thing has qualified them. We still assist them. And now people are calling me proactively. They don't have violations on record, but they come to me knowing that they could get violations, and I can help them, which is really a better time to help people. Also have inspectors more on board now, is saying, why don't you try working with Suzanne first? I'm not going to start a case for X number of days or months. And if you can get it resolved in that time period, we won't even open a case. And so that's that's good too, because the inspectors aren't just out there just frantically writing up cases and adding that stress to their lives. They're saying, we've got someone to help you. If you're willing to work with her, we can maybe help you that way. And let's see if that works first before we start a case. And many cases that helps. There are those that are just opposed to help at all. And unfortunately, those have to go through the whole court process. But when we can help people that way, that is a kinder way to help people. And so now I work with a lot of people who have no violations on record, but they would probably have violations if an inspector were to go out and inspect and start a case. And so that has evolved over time, where, okay, it's okay to work, because I argued that and said, why aren't we helping people before they get violations? It seems like that is the best time to help them. And so, it evolved that way. A couple of years ago, the city of Wichita sold some Hyatt property. And in that, we have 6 council districts within Wichita. And they gave $1 million to each council district to use as they saw fit for community outreach, to help their community. In one of those districts, they gave code enforcement in general $250,000, but they designated $50,000 specifically for my program. But they wanted a pilot project. They wanted some proactive inspector activity, but they also wanted proactive code enforcement liaison activity as well. And so with that $50,000, I was able to buy lawn care equipment for my volunteer groups to use. when they're doing these programs. I was able to provide a few more dumpsters as well with that. And they wanted to see, if we were more proactive in this and if that would make a difference. Well, it did. Our statistics came back. It was, a huge difference. And what that led to was the city kind of prioritizing my program even more. And now I am giving a substantial budget every year to help with these projects. In addition to the equipment and the dumpsters, I was also able to provide materials for repair projects. And now, as long as there's money in that budget and we feel like it's a worthwhile project, I can provide $1,000 per household for materials. So I've been able to get fences replaced, porch repairs, window well at one point. We were able to contribute to a roof project where I had a volunteer roofer. We had some grant assistance, not enough, and I was able to contribute my $1,000 to get that roof done. And so that also, they saw the value of that and were able to add to my program to provide more financial support for that program. And so all these resources have been a huge asset. It's really shown that the city of Wichita does have a heart and that we really do want to care for our citizens. And it's reduced the stress of these individuals going through this process and not sure how to resolve their violations. And they know that if they do end up in the court system, they have an advocate to kind of be there for them and give them that support. I'm in environmental court 3 times a week, as much as possible. With COVID, I didn't go for a while, and I'm just kind of starting to get back into going again. But they know that they have someone that they can call if they're struggling with that. And it has been an amazing program. There's a lot more room for growth. They're looking at adding 2 employees for me, an administrative assistant and another person to kind of do the liaison piece with me, because they've seen that it's growing, there's value in it. I want to do more outreach to more contractors to get them to maybe donate a service a year. Can you donate a year? I had one roofer who did for a while. He'd donate 1 roof a year, but I want to get, more contractors, pest control to help with bed bugs and stuff like that. And I just got to where I ran out of time because I was so busy helping individual, people and overseeing group projects. This also has evolved to where we've also done where I've had larger groups. I've had groups as large as 300 that have done entire neighborhoods. We have another program that handles the big neighborhood cleanups through the neighborhood associations. But I've had some that were just volunteer groups, not the neighborhood associations. And I've had as many as 300 volunteers that took multiple blocks and they helped with specific areas. I've had groups that wanted to do alley projects. And so we've also evolved into providing dumpsters and trash bags, the hand tools, lawnmowers, whatever, to help with those as well. And so this program keeps evolving and changing and growing, but so does the support for the program as they see the difference it makes. And I love my program and excited to talk about it and open to any questions at any time.
Well, I can hear your passion for the project. You'd have to be passionate and busy because I think last year you said you had 690 or so cases.
Yes.
That's, almost 2 a day.
Absolutely.
You're dealing
Yes.
with. Are the majority of those proactive efforts, you think, or is the majority still dealing with those that have gone to court or that are in that code enforcement?
I really think we're starting to move more. I think it's about 50-50 now, but we are really starting to move more to the proactive side. And part of that is, again, word of mouth, that I help one individual and she tells her neighbor about me and they're calling me, that kind of thing. But also the inspectors are getting more on board with that proactive help, with asking, telling them that they work with me, they won't start a case. And I really do think it's about, when I first started, they were all code violation cases. And then now it's probably closer to 50-50 on that, which is great.
Well, help me out a little bit here on the code enforcement. Explain, and I'm asking this because of I hear stories from the town I live in and another community that I grew up in and that I help with, and I hear leaders and residents of that town that express their frustration over homes that have, maybe fallen into disrepair. The grass is always tall there. The place looks like a mess. It becomes a constant frustration topic of conversation. And even with code enforcement, it doesn't seem to really resolve the issues in those communities. Is that
Yes.
what you were seeing? And
That is what we were seeing, and in many cases, it was because they didn't have the means to resolve those violations. And in some cases, unfortunately, it's because they have no desire to resolve the violations. And it can be a long process. I mean, we send them a notice. Eventually they go to court, and the court process can take a year or more, and they can still not be in compliance. And we have the city of Wichita for some of those repeat offenders who are constantly coming back, who aren't willing to work with me or aren't really in a position where they should be working with me. We are kind of changing the way we budget our money. We're doing more city abatements in which the city, and sometimes this requires getting an administrative search warrant through a court process from our end. But we go in, we clean up the properties. We can't do this with home repairs, but we can do this with cleanups or towing away inoperable vehicles, that sort of thing. We do the work, they get a bill for it. If they don't pay it in a timely manner, it's assessed to their property taxes. And so we are really starting to move away from the court process for those particular cases, because we can resolve them faster than if we take them to court again and again and again and again. And it hits them sooner and harder because it goes right on their property taxes. In Kansas, once you're 5 years behind on property taxes, they can legally sell your property at a tax auction. And so there's more of an incentive to pay those fees. And we have a greater chance of getting our money back on those than when we send them to court and we fine them. Because in those situations, because we also take renters to court, we cannot really assess it to the property owner per se. Those just go to a collection agency to try and collect if they're not paid by a tenant. And anybody who is really good at avoiding collection agencies and has no interest in paying that, they're just not going to. So we are really moving for those. We're not everybody, and really anybody we feel we can help through my program. That's where we're going to go first. Is let's identify why they're not resolving their violations. If it's a health or a financial issue, then they're going to make the referrals to me. If it's somebody that just doesn't want to comply, they have the ability to comply, they just choose not to, then we're really turning more to those abatements that happen more quickly. But it's not the court process. Resolving code violations can be a very long process, and adding me to the mix does make that go faster.
yeah, that would seem to speed the process up, and it would seem also to be more likely to actually resolve the issue, which
Yes.
have neighbors upset or whatever. And it sounds like a much better PR for the cities.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Yes. Yes.
Because sometimes you hear people being really, really critical of the city for this type of thing, for code enforcement, and
Right.
you're really helping people correct the issue, which makes the neighbors happy as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It's also created better relationships even between our inspectors and citizens, because they're out there to enforce the law and to give them those notices. But at the same time, they're talking to them about my program and saying, yeah, we got a complaint on your property. You do have these violations, but we can help you. We might be able to help you. If you contact Suzanne, she might be able to provide you some resources. And that has really helped. I know we had a couple of our landlords that had multiple properties that were always in violation, that were problems. And what we did with them is we went in and we provided them with resources, maybe a dumpster to clean up several properties. Or, we bought one for his own personal home. We paid for some materials to help him replace his own roof. And now, because we decided they were worth investing a little bit in, now they are on my volunteer list, and they're out there they have skills. They're landlords, so they have skills on home repairs. They have resources. We have one that brings equipment. He brings trailers and tractors and whatever we need to make projects go better. And we have been able to turn that around by engaging our landlords even a little bit. We didn't provide them with a lot, just a little bit to show that, yeah, we want to help you too. We know you have a lot of properties. It's hard to keep track of all of them all the time. Yes, it's their responsibility to do that. But hey, if you work with us, we'll work with you. And now they are some of my best volunteers. Another one of our very low income neighborhoods that has been just lots of chronic problems there, we set it up with them. If you will monitor dumpsters, if you guys, we have like 5 of them, if you guys will take turns being in charge of dumpsters, I will provide one dumpster a month that you can empty and return at one time each month, because there's so many problems in these neighborhoods. As long as you're willing to take responsibility for the dumpsters, I will provide you. So basically providing 2 dumpsters a month. We will continue to provide that as long as you will continue to monitor and make sure they don't get overfilled. If they do, you have to level them off. And this has been huge too. They are out there taking much more pride in their communities and in their rental properties. The people living there know that, oh, a dumpster's coming this month. And that has also really helped improve those relationships, because those landlords hated us before. They were always getting notices from their tenants, and now they're partnering with us.
You're
So
part social worker, part volunteer coordinator, part fundraiser, part community
absolutely,
developer. All
absolutely.
all those
And
things
I
put
love it.
together.
And I love it. And you just, when I first started, I never imagined, I never envisioned it. I had lots of ideas, but yet, I was so limited when I first started. Okay, you can help people with code violations in this neighborhood. And it was awful because people would call me that were a block out of that neighborhood. And I had to say, sorry, I can't help you. You're not in our core area that we are providing services for. And I hated that, because even though you have areas that you have more people in poverty in those neighborhoods, poverty is everywhere,
Sure.
and elderly people live everywhere. Health problems hit, everyone, no matter what your, socioeconomic status is. And things can change overnight. People lose their jobs even in the good neighborhood, in the so-called good neighborhoods. So I was very happy when this kind of extended beyond just
Was
this limited
was
area.
there some of this type of volunteer work taking place in Wichita, maybe under the umbrella of, I don't know, maybe United Way, Day of Caring projects, or other groups, and if there was a little bit of that now, is this kind of all come under one umbrella now, or
There are still a lot of individual groups that go through United Way, and we want to do a volunteer project. I do have a relationship with United Way, with their volunteer coordinator. And if she feels it's a project that might fall under what I do, she will contact me and say, hey, I have a group who wants to do, a project on such and such a date, this many volunteers. Do you have something for them? And so there's a lot of coordination with them. And yeah, some of what they get is they want to do something inside, or some other type of project, or a specific business, or the zoo or whatever. But if it's something like what I do, she makes all those referrals to my program, and I'm on their referral list. They contact me if they feel, or give out my phone number for people that are calling, because they also get citizens calling and say, oh, I need help with a new roof. I don't know what to do. And
Mhm.
I'm on their list, and they send them to me as well. So,
That's a, that is a great
mhm,
partnership then, a connection. I'm sure you kind of
absolutely.
had the same with churches and some businesses and things
Yes,
like that too. Sure.
absolutely. Uh-huh.
If you're so you've been at this 5 years now.
Hmm.
So if you're dreaming and looking ahead, what's your dreams for 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would like to, I will have my staff on, I'm hoping on board by then. We were planning on getting that started, and then, COVID-19 hit, as we kind of put
Yes.
that on hold. And now we're kind of, so I will have my staff on board, which is going to help a lot. My vision is that we're going to double the number of volunteer groups we have on my list, and I'm going to have more with special skills, more contractors that are willing to donate specific types of projects to the program. That's kind of where I want to go next. I want more time. I think adding staff will free up more time for me for those outreach activities. And my goal is to double the number of volunteer groups. And I'm at 115 now, so we're talking 230 groups. um, I think with 230 groups, no one will have to be on that list for very long. But some of those people on there need specialized volunteers. They need people that know how to replace siding or put on a roof, or those kinds of projects. So that's my goal, is to really get more of that specialized labor on board for volunteer projects.
Wow. Well, that's really inspirational, encouraging. Um, it's exciting to see because I think it's something that a community of any size could grab a hold of as a model, an example. Um,
Absolutely.
and you mentioned early on, when you have a homeowner that has code violations, and then it may not be financially possible to take care of it, or even if they do, it creates other problems, being gone from work and things of that nature. Do you are, do you track uh, what happens after you've made some of these corrections, or after you've helped people with their code violations? Do you see some improvements in that home ownership, or do you see um, has it reduced repeat offenders? Maybe that would be a way that you measure it. What's the
Yeah.
long-term prognosis, I guess, for a house that's had a code and they've been helped? Kind of what's the long-term prognosis?
Yes, it really does seem to. Now, there are those that come back to my program, and they try and come back multiple times. And I kind of have in place, the first time I help completely with open arms, and it's okay, here's what I can do. And when they come back the second time, I still help, but we have a very strong conversation about, okay, what are your goals, and how you're not going to get in this position again. This is especially true with like premise violations. If they have a bunch of junk in their yard, and then they get their property in that condition again, and I can see if it's tree waste or something like that that we don't always have control over. But when they have, refrigerators and bicycles and whatnot in there, we get it cleaned up, and then they're right back there again. We have a serious conversation the second time. If it happens the third time, it's kind of three strikes and you're out kind of thing. It's like, and I'm still kind about it, but I have a stronger conversation. This is the third time. There also is a priority list for my resources. I mean, I can help them apply for a grant program again, because they might get a roof this time around, but then something else happens. They have electrical issues. In those cases, I get it. They got their roof taken care of, but now they have a completely new violation. Those I'll help again and again as much as I need to until we get that. And grant programs are limited on how much they can help each time. So Sometimes they do come back, but if it's for a different violation, that's a completely different story. But if it's the same thing, and they call me, the first time, and I give them a dumpster and maybe even empty and return it, because they have two dumpsters full of stuff. Well, then a year later, they call me and want another dumpster for basically the same kind of violations. They can go on my wait list, but they're not in that highest category anymore. And if I were to get, to them on that list, and I got different categories, there's those with the code violations that have never gotten a dumpster before. And, and it goes down from there. If you've gotten 2 before, 3 before, wherever, those at the bottom of my list will probably never, ever get another dumpster, and I explain that to them. When I get that second call, I'll say, well, I can put you back on the wait list for a dumpster, but you need to know that anybody who has never had one before will always be bumped ahead of you. I may or may not be able to get you one. So I still try and I'll be kind and put them on the list, but I'm very clear with them that, don't know when I can get that for you or if I even can. They can stay on the list for up to 2 years, and then at 2 years, I remove them. Unless there's some extenuating circumstances where I think I should keep them on there. But that's so that they can still feel like they might get help, that they're on a list if we, but so far I haven't really run out of people who haven't got, who haven't received the first one. And so usually once they've received that first one, they're probably not going to get another dumpster because we just get so many new requests.
Yeah.
And I have about 75 people on a wait list right now. So,
Well, in between your heavy workload and all these
Mhm.
cases you're dealing with, because it does sound like a lot, I would think that you might get an occasional phone call from some other cities or individuals that watch this and are interested in maybe mirroring what you've done or mimicking what Wichita has done. You guys have I don't know if you've ever had that type of inquiry before. Do you have a little packet of information or a website that you point people to kind of further explain what you're doing and maybe help other groups take the same approach?
There's a little bit of information about my program in general. There's not the detail that I've just provided you here, and it's under the Sedgwick County. I think there's also one under city of Wichita.gov, but there's also one under sedgwickcounty.gov, and it's under MABCD, which stands for Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, MABCD. It's under their specific information, and there's a little bit of information, but part of the reason there's not a lot of information about my program is because it's a program of me, and they're a little afraid to advertise it too much because I already am working with 700 families a year.
Yeah,
As we
yeah,
add staff, they may be more willing to advertise it a little bit more. It's just like some of my volunteer groups who want to have television stations there and such forth. I always tell them, make the focus about your group, because if it went on there and it said, yeah, she provides dumpsters, because I've had people say, oh, I heard you provide dumpsters to just anybody and blah, blah, blah. And, when can I get my free dumpster? And
yeah,
so we have to be a little selective in who we help. And if the word got out there too much, it would probably be more people we'd have to turn away. And I already get 50 plus phone calls a day from people. And, that's part of the problem. And that's part of why we want to add an administrative assistant to my program to take those phone calls and kind of determine what they're calling about, if they would qualify for assistance, that sort of thing. But that's kind of why there's not a lot of public information about my program, just because it would just be too overwhelming at this point.
yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
Mhm.
Well, I'm going to end the record button here, but I just
Okay.
want to publicly say thank you for taking your time to join in today and to share a little bit about your program. What an example for the rest of us and for other communities, and sure appreciate your time in doing that, Suzanne.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody about this. I love my program. So, and thank you.